Racist gang attacks, black woman unaware she's a Navy SEAL. The dimly lit parking lot outside a local convenience store buzzed with a quiet tension. It was nearing midnight, and the flickering neon sign cast long shadows across the pavement. Diana Moore, a black woman in her early 30s, stepped out of her sleek black SUV, her posture calm but commanding. She wore a simple hoodie and jeans, blending into the night. But what the gang lurking in the shadows didn't know was that Diana was no ordinary woman. She was a highly trained Navy SEAL, fresh off her latest classified mission. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below. Diana had spent the last decade mastering hand-to-hand combat, advanced weaponry, and survival tactics in the harshest environments imaginable. But none of her training had prepared her for the hatred she encountered back home. As she walked toward the store, she noticed the gang. 4 men, dressed in tattered jeans and leather jackets adorned with racist insignias, leaned against a graffiti-covered wall. Their sneering laughter cut through the quiet. Diana felt their eyes lock onto her like predators sizing up prey. "Hey, you lost, sweetheart?" one of them jeered as she passed. Diana ignored them, walking purposefully toward the store entrance. She'd encountered their type before. Loud, brazen, but ultimately cowards when confronted with real strength. But as she exited the store minutes later, the gang had multiplied. 6 now. They surrounded her car, blocking her path. "You think you can just walk around here like you own the place?" another taunted, stepping closer. "Not so fast, Blackie," said another, his voice dripping with malice. Diana's heart rate didn't rise, her training kicked in. She scanned the situation, noting each man's stance, weaponry, a knife tucked into a boot, a crowbar dangling from another's hand. They had no idea who they were dealing with. "Gentlemen," she said coolly, her voice steady, "you don't want to do this." That seemed to amuse them. The leader, a burly man with a swastika tattooed on his neck, stepped forward. "Oh, I think we do." Without warning, he lunged at her, crowbar swinging. It was over in seconds. Diana ducked, her movements fluid and precise. She grabbed his wrist mid-swing, twisting it with enough force to disarm him. A sharp kick to his knee sent him crumpling to the ground, howling in pain. The others charged, but they were no match for her. She moved like a phantom, striking with surgical precision. A jab to one's throat left him gasping for air. Another received a swift elbow to the jaw, followed by a knee to the ribs. The last man, the youngest, tried to flee, but Diana caught him effortlessly, pinning him against her SUV. "Let me go! I'm sorry!" he cried, tears streaming down his face. "Not so brave now, are you?" Diana said, her voice low and menacing. She pulled out her phone and called the police. "This is Lieutenant Diana Moore," she said, her calm voice belying the chaos around her. "I've got a situation at the convenience store on 5th and Main. 4 suspects detained. You'll want to bring an ambulance." When the police arrived, the gang members were moaning on the ground, unable to stand. The officers looked at Diana, their eyes widening as they recognized her name and rank. "You handled this all by yourself?" one asked. Diana nodded, her gaze unwavering. Just another day. The story made headlines the next day. Went viral, sparking outrage and admiration. Diana's name became a symbol of strength and resilience, a reminder that prejudice and hatred would never win against true courage. As for the gang, they learned an unforgettable lesson that night. Underestimating someone based on the color of their skin can come with devastating consequences. The next day, Diana sat in her living room, sipping a cup of coffee as the morning news replayed the events from the night before. Her name was everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, and all over social media. Friends and former colleagues had flooded her phone with messages of support. Some congratulated her for her bravery, others expressed disbelief at the gang's audacity. She scrolled through the comments on an article about the incident. Most were supportive, applauding her courage and skill, but a few toxic voices seeped through. They got what they deserved. One less racist gang on the streets. Unbelievable what she did. A true hero. But then, she probably staged it for attention. No way this actually happened. Diana sighed. No matter what she did, There were always people questioning her motives or diminishing her accomplishments. She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, staring out the window. The city stretched out before her, vibrant and chaotic, a place she'd fought to protect for years. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She stood, her muscles instinctively tensing. Even at home, her guard was never fully down. Peeking through the peephole, she saw a uniformed officer standing on her porch. When she opened the door, the officer, a young man with a nervous expression, quickly saluted her. "Lieutenant Moore," he said, his voice steady but respectful. "I'm Officer Harris. May I come in?" Diana gestured for him to enter. He stood awkwardly in the foyer, his hat in his hands. "Ma'am, I just wanted to thank you for what you did last night. My younger brother works at that convenience store. He wasn't there last night, but he could have been. You stopped something terrible from happening." Diana nodded, appreciating his words but feeling a twinge of discomfort at being called a hero. "I'm glad I could help, but I hope this serves as a reminder that we all have to be vigilant about the hate in our communities." Harris nodded, hesitating before speaking again. "The department received a lot of calls this morning. People want to know if you'd be willing to speak at a community event we're organizing. It's focused on unity and education, trying to address some of the issues that lead to things like what happened last night." Diana studied him for a moment. She had spent her career operating in the shadows, protecting people without them ever knowing her name. But maybe it was time for something different. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Harris looked relieved. "Thank you, ma'am. I'll leave my card here if you have any questions." After he left, Diana sat back down, the officer's words swirling in her mind. Speaking publicly wasn't something she enjoyed, but if her story could spark change, maybe it was worth it. A few days later, she found herself standing in front of a packed auditorium. The air buzzed with anticipation as the audience waited for her to speak. Diana scanned the crowd. Young people, community leaders, activists, and even a few officers sat among them. Taking a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone. "Last week, I encountered a group of men who judged me based on the color of my skin," she began, her voice steady and strong. "They saw me as someone weak, someone easy to intimidate. What they didn't know is that I've spent my life preparing for moments like that, not just physically but mentally. And I want to talk about why that preparation is necessary and what we can do to change the need for it." The room fell silent, hanging on her every word. Diana spoke about her experiences, not just as a Navy SEAL, but as a Black woman in a world that often underestimated her. She talked about the importance of education, community, and standing up against hate. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. People lined up to shake her hand, thanking her for her service and her words. As she left the auditorium that night, Diana felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she wasn't walking it alone. The world was changing, and for the first time, she felt like she was part of that change in more ways than one. Drop a comment if you enjoyed this story. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll make me very happy. Thank you, and I look forward to your like,